the first question is, some servers are never discovered. What do we do here? So in this case, when some servers never appear in discovery, we always start with the basics. First, we verify the reachability from the mid server. We test here ping, traceroute, and required ports like SSH or WMI. If the mid server cannot reach the target system, then discovery simply cannot working here. Okay. Second thing which you have to look at is we validate the credentials. From mid server itself, we try to log in into same account configured in discovery. If the login fails there, we work with the infrastructure team or security team to fix the credentials or the firewall rules. In third case, we review the discovery configuration. Here we confirm if the IP range is correct, it is not excluded. Also, the correct mid server is selected or not. So only after these foundational checks, we move to patterns or advanced troubleshooting. So the approach is very simple here, very structured. First of all, we check reachability, then login, then configuration, and then finally the advanced one, that is patterns.
Ladies and gentlemen, join the channel membership to crack ServiceNow interviews with real practice, clear guidance, and confidence. All the best.
Second question, discovery is creating duplicate CIs. How do we handle it? Okay, when the discovery creates duplicate CIs, it usually means that the platform cannot confidently identify that the two records represent the same asset, right? So here we handle this in four clear steps. The very first one is we identify the duplicates. Okay, often you can find such duplicates based on the same hostname or IPs or hostname and serial numbers. Okay, so check that. Then secondly, we strengthen the identification and reconciliation rules. Okay, we avoid matching only on hostname and include. We have to check that, and if it is on hostname only, then we have to include stronger identifiers there like serial number or unique IDs. Okay. Thirdly, we review our CI sources such as SSCM or import jobs. We clearly define the ownership there, which tool is allowed to create CIs and which tools are allowed to only update them. Okay, so we have to define such ownership there. Finally, at number 4, we clean the existing duplicates by merging or retiring them carefully. Many people are going to delete it, but delete is not an option here. Okay. And then finally, we have to set a regular monitoring report to detect new duplicates early. Okay, so this is the approach here. In this, we are not just cleaning the data, but we are eliminating the root cause. Now, the third question, team is saying that we don't really get any value from CMDB. What do we do in this case? Okay, so in this cases, when the team says CMDB has no value, it usually means it is not helping them in daily operations. So instead of discussing CMDB as a concept, we have to focus on the real problems. We can ask simple questions such as, where do you waste most of your time during the major incidents, or what information is missing before the risky changes? Okay. So once we have the questions ready, then we have to select one or two real use cases. And based on that, we built a simple focused dashboard using the real data. Okay, not the demo examples, real data, so that we will be able to present the real value there. And then we do a demo in front of them with the real data basically. So when the team sees that CMDB actively is helping them in a war room or cab meeting, okay, adoption happens naturally. In this case, we don't need actually to push CMDB. We demonstrate the value through solutions and the team will adopt it gradually. Okay, so this is the kind of approach we have to use here. Number 4, audit says our CMDB is incomplete. What is our plan in that case? Okay, so when audit or auditor raise concerns about CMDB completeness, we stay first of all transparent and data driven. First of all, we measure the gap. Okay, we compare the production server data from vCenter, Cloud Platform, or Active Directory with the one which exists in CMDB. Okay, to get the real gap there. Secondly, we define a clear and simple matrix such as X percentage of production servers are present in CMDB with mandatory attribute filled. Okay, this is the matrix we define here. Next, we can prioritize the discovery for production environment first, and then we can step ahead and remove the obsolete and duplicate CIs, ensuring the remaining data reflect reality. Okay. Finally, we publish a monthly dashboard that show the steady improvement and assign clear ownership by the platform. So here, what I'm doing here, basically, instead of debating with audit or auditor, we measure, plan, and demonstrate the process accordingly. Now, next question is event management is creating too many alerts. How do we reduce the noise there? It is a correct thing that when alert volume become too high, people stop trusting it. So we have to address this systematically. First of all, we need to analyze the alert source to understand which tool and alert types create the most noise. Okay. Secondly, we remove or downgrade the alerts that no one ever acted on. So basically, if an alert never triggers any action, it should not be a critical one. And then further, at third point, we can consolidate the repeated alerts for the same issue into a single alert with one counter. Then at third step, we can consolidate the repeated alerts for the same issue, which is coming again and again. Okay, this is also one of the thing. Then one more intelligent step is to group the related alerts. So one root cause produce one primary alert instead of making many tickets. This will definitely help there. Finally, we share before and after metrics with the stakeholders, and hopefully these steps will reduce the noise, lower on the call stress, and rebuild the trust in event management. Now the next question is alerts are not mapping to the right CI. How do we fix that? Okay, when alerts do not map to the correct CI, incident handling and reporting become unreliable. This is a kind of true. Okay, and being a asset manager or CMDB manager, we have to fix this step by step. First of all, we analyze the raw event data coming from monitoring tools, okay, such as hostname, IP, tag, and resource IDs. Secondly, we refine the mapping rules, prioritizing the strongest identifier first, okay. Then at third step, we align the naming convention and tagging standards with the monitoring team. Then at fourth step, we have to track the unmapped events and continuously improve the rule based on the real data. Okay. And for cloud and complex resources, we define CI models that match how monitoring tools represent the infrastructure. So these are the few steps which we have to follow, which we can use. Okay. So here the goal is consistency across the systems. So binding becomes reliable here. Okay. Next question. In a big outage, teams are blaming each other. How do we use item data there? So yes, this is a good question, and blame game is always a part of office. In major outages, emotions run high and blame starts quickly. It is a truth. So being an item specialist, our role is to shift the conversation from emotions to fact. First of all, we present the service health view, okay, and highlight which component raised the alert first. Secondly, we use the CMDB relationships to explain dependencies and identify likely root cause versus the downstream impact. This is important. And a third step, we built a clear timeline showing the alert, user impact, and the recent changes or deployment. So once this data is visible, the discussion naturally move from blaming teams to fixing the issue. And this is how ITOM become a natural source of truth in a war room as well. What a wonderful question. Now the eighth question, business is asking what percentage of P1 incident had a prior alert. So basically it's a KPI, and this KPI help measure how proactive our monitoring tool is. Okay. So first we collect all the P1 incidents for a defined time period and capture their impacted CIs or service and start time. Okay. Secondly, we analyze alerts for those same CIs or services in a predefined windows before the incident, typically 30 to 60 minutes. If at least one alert exists, we mark the incident as with a prior alert. Okay. If not, we mark the incident as without prior alert. So here, next step is to calculate the percentage and track it over time. And finally, the incidents without prior alerts become a key input to improve monitoring and threshold there. So now in question number 9, they are asking like we are asked to implement a auto remediation. So how do we keep it safe? So ladies and gentlemen, auto remediation brings a great value, but we need to introduce it carefully. First of all, we start with the low risk actions such as restarting a agent or clearing the cache. We avoid high impact actions here such as database changes, etc. Okay. Secondly, we define a clear trigger rule there and decide where human approvals are required. This is important. Without human approval, we should not go ahead with the critical things mostly. And then at third level, we run automations in a recommended mode where engineers manually approve the execution. Okay, by all this action, once stability and trust is established, we gradually enable the full automation with detailed login and rollback visibility. Once it is implemented, even though we regularly review the automations because environment evolves, and when it evolves, there may be a possibility that we need to tweak some things into the automation things, automated scripts. So here our approach is simple. Automation with control, not automation by default. Finally, the last question is discovery is running, but no one uses item data. How do we change this thing in 90 days? It's a very good question. If item data is not being used, it means the tool exists, but the habit do not, and there is no value. We are just paying the license, but we are not utilizing the value. So in this case, we treat item like a product. First, we speak with incident, change, infrastructure, and cloud teams to identify their daily pains. Okay. Secondly, we select one or two high impact services where these pains are clearly visible and it is unbearable. Okay. And then at third step, we bring everything together. That is discovery, service mapping, alert, incident, and changes around these services and understand the clear picture, the bigger picture, and connect the dot. And then in fourth step, we embed these views directly into our daily workflows, not separate dashboards. Okay. Finally, now on fifth step, we train teams using real past incidents. Okay. Finally, we capture the success stories and replicate the same model across other services as well. So we can say that in 90 days, we don't fix everything, but we prove the value through strong real examples, use cases, and present it to the people and the team.